Are you crying? Am I crying? No, I'm not crying. You're crying.
I was on YouTube one day when I came across this video. Therapist reacts to a silent voice. I opened the video and I saw a grown-ass man crying and I was like, what? The anime can't be that sad because I've watched some sad anime in my day and none of them have really brought me to the point of tears. And I'm a pretty emotional guy, but I guess I find it hard to cry about these things. I do feel intense emotion though, due to the empathy I feel for the character, but it gets stuck at my throat and my eyes don't water up. And even if they do, it's not at a point where it overflows. And it's funny because I was a crybaby as a kid. I don't know what changed, but I'm not sure my heart hardened enough to the point where I wouldn't be able to shed a tear when I genuinely feel sad, but hey, who knows, right? So I watched the movie and it broke me. This might be a lengthy video, but I hope it's not, so I'm going to try not to narrate too much, but word it in a way you might get the kind of picture I'm trying to paint, to try to help us understand each important character's point of view, not particularly in defense of the said characters, but why they acted a certain way. Because the way the characters are due to an action or inaction the said character made in the past, which in turn led to the person to become a certain way. So I'll try to talk about it in a way we understand the said character's worldview. I'll be going in depth to make certain points, so if you haven't watched it or want to watch it, I suggest you close the video, go and watch it and come back. A silent voice, or the shape of voice, or Koe no Katachi, is a romance drama anime based off the manga of the same name, which was released in 2016. It follows Ishida Shoya as he ties up loose ends of his life. He quits his job, sells all his stuff, empties his account, pays his debt. The day arrives, he stands on the bridge and decides to take his life. He got distracted by the boys playing with fireworks. He planned it so perfectly in his mind, he heads home. We are then taken back to when he was in 6th grade. He was actually a happy child, not a care in the world. He was popular among his friends. He was doing good, for a kid at least. It was a normal day when the teacher introduced a new transfer student. Her name was Shoko Nishimiya. She was deaf. And this is where I started to have a problem, with the teacher especially. The teacher taught the class casually, without any consideration that he had a student who had special needs. So, Ueno took it upon herself to help out Nishimiya, while the teacher could care less. So Nishimiya continued her days at school struggling to keep up because she didn't have a particular person to help her, so she kept making mistakes. And due to the teacher's negligence, it got harder for Ueno to keep helping her, and that's when it began. Ueno couldn't stand it anymore, so she decides to focus on herself and her friends. Nishimiya, feeling alone, keeps trying to make new friends, but slowly Ueno and her friends begin to pull away. So in her loneliness, she tries to make friends with Ishida. But Ishida didn't want to be friends because Nishimiya was problematic and was causing problems for Ueno and his friends. The next day, a teacher was introduced to teach the kids sign language. Ueno, who felt it was a hassle to learn the language, retorted with, "It's easier to communicate with writing." But Miyoko Sahara wanted to give it a try, so she decides to learn the sign language in order to be able to communicate with Nishimiya. But that did not work well for Sahara because Ueno and her friends felt like she was being too much of a goody two-shoes and turned their backs on her. Time passed. Sahara didn't come to school anymore. This is where it truly began. Ishida wrote what they were all feeling about Nishimiya being responsible for Sahara leaving. Nishimiya saw this and replied with, "Thank you." It continued through to the next day. Ishida taunts her and throws out her hearing aid, and he does it over and over and over till he went overboard. He actually hurt her this time. He got into trouble, but he was let off with a scolding by the teacher. She met him outside and told him, "I'm sorry." She was sorry that he got in trouble. Ishida couldn't understand. She just wanted to be friends with him, but he didn't want anything to do with her. She was annoying. Nishimiya did not show up to school the next day. Her mother called concerning her missing hearing aids and her being bullied at school. As kids, they all denied the bullying, but the teacher called out Ishida, the one most liable to take the fall, and when his friends were questioned, they denied him. The tables have turned on Ishida. His friends have all turned their backs on him. This is the part I voice out my concerns about the teacher. From the beginning, he never did anything to help Nishimiya and left it to her classmates. He never showed any interest in helping either. When the bullying was happening, he did not show any signs of concern, even when they were happening right in front of him. He just dismisses the act altogether because it was interrupting his teaching. And when it got out of hand, he took no responsibility and blamed it all on Ishida, the kid, whom he didn't even attempt to offer any guidance to when he saw what was happening. In my books, it's their sensei who is to blame, to have let it escalate this far, to not even make the attempt to help or preach to the young ones the responsibility they had to do the right thing, even though it's hard. He didn't do any of these things because he didn't care. It was none of his business. And due to his lack of guidance, he ruined the lives of these kids. Ishida comes from a good home, which helps to build confidence in kids. So naturally, he is headstrong. When he returns home, his mom or sis, I don't know, it was never clear who she was. Maybe my translation was bad, but let's call her his mom for now. His mom received a call from school and was surprised that he of all people could do something like that. He noticed his mother in tears but didn't say a word. Ishida begins to take notice of the consequences of his actions, but it's too late. He watches as his mom removes her savings to compensate for his actions. Ishida is not a bad kid. He just lacked the understanding of his actions. He was a kid, and those actions were what caused his unfortunate tenure in grade school. He was now the target of bullies, and those bullies were his friends. They were called aliens, and they really had a hard time. This scene was quietly inserted in the montage he was being bullied in. He's now an alien, and as we know, aliens don't fit in. He returns alone to his class where he sees Nishimiya wiping something off his table. He gets annoyed by this and grabs her, but she just smiles at him gently. He doesn't understand, so he gets angry. But this time, she fights back. She is in pain. She tries to tell him that she's dying too, but her words are not clear. He doesn't understand. The bullying continues. Nishimiya is not there to clean the hurtful words off his table anymore. Years pass. Ishida steadily makes his way to his class when he caught a glimpse of her, the girl he heard all those years ago. He reaches out to her. She recognized him but couldn't muster the words to say to him, so she runs off. He chases after her and sees her trying to hide from him. He found her and he communicated. He used sign language. He wanted to be friends with her. He finally figured out what she wanted to tell him long ago. Middle school was a chance for him to reinvent himself. But Ishida heard Shimada tell his friends that he's a bully, alienating him from everyone before he could make new friends. His sins came back to bite him. He never even stood a chance. He couldn't start over. So he lived his life unable to look at people, constantly staring at their feet. And when he finally gathers the courage to lift his head, an X is placed over their faces. This X prevents him from connecting to people because he can't look them in the eyes, can't see them for who they truly are. His insecurities constantly put words in their mouth that they aren't even saying, further putting himself down even more. A kid was getting bullied one day which caught Ishida's eye. He didn't know what to do. Should he help this person or just ignore it? He's no longer the confident kid he was anymore. He's now meek and mild-mannered. Even still, he tries to help the kid out by offering the bully compensation of his bike in place for the other kid. The bully reluctantly accepts and takes him up on his offer instead. Ishida makes his way home after a failed attempt to see Nishimiya, and he sees the kid with his bicycle, the one who was getting bullied earlier in the day. He was trying to return the favor. The X finally came off. His name was Nagatsuka. He sits behind Ishida, but he never noticed him. From there on, they became friends. What are friends anyway? Ishida asks this question because he doesn't know the meaning of being a friend after being alone for so long. Nagatsuka thinks that friendship defies logic or words because a friendship just happens. To him, Ishida is his Yasho. Ishida has been trying to reconcile with himself about the meaning of friendship. He tries to meet up in Nishimiya. Maybe he can find the answer. Nishimiya tries to open the book she used for conversations in the past, which Ishida returned to her, but Ishida didn't think it was a good idea for her to open old wounds since there were so many mean things written in them. He tries to take it away from her, and it fell into the river. Nishimiya readies herself to dive in after the notebook. Ishida tries to stop her. He fails. He dives in to help her in case she's not able to swim, but is perfectly fine. He soon returns the notebook and said she will see him later. Nishimiya likes Ishida, but she's unable to tell him. She tries to change so that he can see her. She changes her hairstyle. She tries to talk more, but is still inaudible. She wants to confess to him in her own words, but he doesn't understand. It's frustrating. She can't reach him. Ishida couldn't understand because she was communicating with more than words, more than sign language, with her actions. They say actions speak louder than words, but unfortunately, he didn't get it until it was too late. Ishida didn't figure out that she wanted to be friends till he was older. Seeing Kawaii change her hairstyle before he realized that she might have wanted to say something to him. Soon after, he finds out that Mashiba wants to be friends with him for some reason. Another X peels off, and then he sees Mashiba smiling at him. He was then invited to hang out with them, and before you know it, he was actually having fun. He has been down for so long, he felt he didn't deserve to be this happy. He actually had friends, even with Ueno, as the X peels off her face too. This was my favorite scene in the whole movie. The movie has a way to tug on your heartstrings in both happy and sad moments, and I was really happy for Ishida. He does deserve forgiveness, and hopefully he was able to forgive himself and move on. But if it's too good to be true, then it probably is. Ueno had this idea of trying to reunite him with his old friends, and his unfortunate reality dawned on him. The X goes back on their faces. He couldn't look at her anymore. Ueno blames Nishimiya for their shortcomings because if Nishimiya wasn't there, they would have all remained friends. What a selfish way to look at it, right? But Ueno was the first one to lend a helping hand to Nishimiya and gave up soon after it got hard to join the bullying with Ishida. She did try at first, but things did not work out. She had to put herself first. Nishimiya had a conversation with Ueno which Yuzuru cleverly recorded. Ueno confronted Nishimiya about the past events which transpired. Unable to take responsibility for her actions, she admits that she didn't understand Nishimiya and claims Nishimiya didn't understand her either. But Nishimiya did understand. She didn't want to be a burden to anyone. She just wanted to fit in and have friends. Perhaps that was too much to ask considering her disability. But even so, she bears the pain and took it all in stride because she hated herself. She hated herself for being this way. She hated herself for being a nuisance. She hated herself for not being normal. Ishida hated himself too, and because they couldn't be honest with themselves, they said hurtful things to each other and had a falling out. None of them could own up for what they did, not even Ishida. His anxiety got the best of him and he hid behind those hurtful words. Death had befallen the Shoko household not long after. It probably hit Yuzuru the hardest since she was the one closest to her grandmother. Yuzuru always had a fascination with death and she took pictures of dead things a lot. I didn't understand this at first and I don't think I still do, but her point of taking those pictures and putting it all over the place was for her sister. Her sister who could not love herself, who did not want to live. Maybe this was a way of showing her the ugliness of death, or I could be wrong and be misinterpreting it. Even monsters have hearts. It's the fireworks festival, also known as the Sumidagawa Hanabi Taikai, but everyone else seemed to be spending it either with their family or they're all alone. Luckily, Ishida gets to spend it with Nishimiya and her family. Making a wish upon the fireworks, she cuts their time short and leaves him. He was soon sent by Yuzuru to get her camera to capture the fireworks, so he makes his way to the Shoko household. Nishimiya had returned earlier, but the place was dark and quiet. He soon sees her on the balcony. As the fireworks light up her silhouette, she begins to climb the balcony. He calls out, but she can't hear him. She keeps climbing. She finally stands atop the balcony, readying herself for the jump. He tried to get to her, but he is stripped by the chair and falls. He calls out to her, but she can't hear him. Writhing in pain, he picks himself up and dashes towards her. As she makes the jump, he was able to catch her. He made it in time, but he can't hold on. She's slipping. He prays to God to give him the strength to hold on. He prayed that he would change. He would make things right. He would look people in the face. So just this once, he prays for the strength to save her. He was successful. She was able to pull herself up, but at what cost? Certain parts of his life flashes before his eyes as he hits the water below. Everything fades to black. What happened after Ishida's incident was truly a sad sight to see. Both families were devastated by what happened. Ueno blames Nishimiya for this because it's easier. It's easier to see her as the enemy, to hold on to the past. She cannot accept Nishimiya because she cannot accept her past. Because she believes that if Nishimiya didn't exist, Ishida would have been better off. They all would have been better off. Nishimiya hates herself too because she feels that she could not change. She could not accept herself and she hated who she was. Ironically, Ishida, the boy who did not understand her, finally accepted her and hoped that maybe she would come to learn to love and accept herself. Realizing this after talking with Nagatsuka, she makes the first move by meeting with all their friends, trying to set things right. They all quickly accepted her, all but Ueno. Ueno could not accept Nishimiya, not even after all her efforts. Nishimiya woke up from a dream where she sees Ishida walking away from life. He wanted to die too. She dashes towards the hospital, hopefully she could see him one last time. She ends up at their meeting spot. She wants to see him but she can't. She lets out a cry, hoping her silent voice would reach him. He opens his eyes. He awakens to see himself plugged in all these machines. He needs to get out of here. He can hear her calling for him. He needs to find her. He drags himself to that place, the place where they could just share a moment of silence, the place where they found themselves again. This was a sort of rebirth for Ishida. He finally addresses the issues he had before in the past and properly apologized to her. Maybe they can both forgive each other and finally be able to live their life properly this time. Soon after, Ishida gathers the courage to apologize to all his friends, but his anxiety got the best of him. Watching this scene in particular gave me a serious case of deja vu because I was a shy kid growing up, and to be honest, I wasn't always shy. I was pretty confident like Ishida was. I didn't remember what happened that made me that way, and maybe for good reason. Some things are better left in the past, but I do remember not being able to look at my friends' faces when I spoke to them. I actually began to forget how they looked like. Long story short, I gathered the courage one day to look at my best friend in the face and saw how different he looked. For so long, I had failed to look at him and he had grown a lot since then. From then, I gathered the courage to start looking at people in the face. It wasn't at all easy, but in time, I overcame that habit. I did not let my insecurities get the best of me. I became a better version of myself, or at least I like to think so. I think Ishida's journey was about forgiveness, having the courage to ask for forgiveness and being able to forgive himself, finally apologizing to all his friends and giving himself the chance to be able to look at people in the face. No inner voice, no hiding behind the X, letting himself see the world for what it truly is. He begins to cry. It's beautiful, isn't it? He does have friends after all. He's loved and he loves them too. Thank you for watching. I really wanted to stay away from narrating and comment on the video, but it's difficult commenting on it when there's so much to talk about. Upon my second rewatch, you would notice certain things and certain characters that were lingering in the movie before officially being introduced in the story. Certain scenes mirroring each other, creating like a foreshadowing of what is to come. Certain scenes with deeper meanings that can be interpreted differently. It was amazing. The movie is laced with so many important scenes, with none of them being wasted on anything irrelevant. And with a deep dive analysis, there are so many things you realize when you rewatch the movie. I dare not to touch on the specifics because I don't think I'm smart enough to comment well on those topics, but it doesn't make it a less fascinating experience. So do yourself a favor to make an effort to watch it. Maybe you might be able to come out with your own interpretation of this movie, which even contradicts mine. I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and remember to keep moving forward.
And depression doesn't go away, doesn't lift. For most people, it's something they still have to wrestle with. It's still there, but there's a capacity to feel again. There's a capacity to experience joy. But the cure for so many things is connection. And we may think no one wants to connect with me, but we just need to find the right people.